and thanks for joining us for Mid-American Gardener. I'm your host, Tinisha Spain, and tonight we've got some great show and tells, and of course our expert panelists here to teach you all of the knowledge they've got about gardening. So let's jump in, have them introduce themselves, and tell you a little bit more about their specialty and what they're into. Rusty, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Tinisha.
Yes.
My name is Rusty Maulding. I am a partner and horticulturist with Nature's View out of Watseka, Illinois. I'm also a past president of the Illinois Landscape Contractors Association. I guess if it's outside and pretty, those are the things that I like to help with, and that's where I've been spending my entire professional career.
Okay, wonderful. Martie.
Hello, my name is Martie Alagna. I'm a retired landscaper just this past spring, but 25 years of experience. So my back hurts, but my brain doesn't.
Hey,
isn't that odd?
You need to get that on a t-shirt.
I do.
I like that.
Christmas is coming. Perennials, shrubs, the private gardens for people. That's kind of what I do in your yard.
Beautiful.
So
okay, Jim.
And I'm Jim Appleby, an entomologist at the University of Illinois and the Illinois Natural History Survey. So I deal with the insects and mites attacking trees, shrubs, and flowers.
Awesome. So weather's kind of turned. There's not a whole lot to do outside right now, but Rusty and Martie know just how to keep you busy. So they've got some show and tells to demonstrate what you can be doing right now.
It's definitely colder outside.
It's a little chilly.
But that doesn't mean that you're necessarily done completely, and it doesn't mean you can't get prepared for the spring and summer. And so I have brought with me a few supplies, a few tools to talk about that will help you in your way of pruning and taking care of your garden. So when we're talking about trimming up shrubs or even small trees, it's best to be sort of armed, if you will, to do the job correctly. And on smaller branches, you want a pair of hand pruners, something like these. These are Felco number 2, kind of the industry standard for hand pruners. And these are great at taking care of like a 1/2 inch and below branches. So we're talking about something the size of the end of your finger or thereabouts. But be careful, it will cut your finger.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a great pair to have. Corona, Steel, Silky. There are several really good brands of hand pruners. So that's the one for smaller. For medium-sized branches, something up to about an inch and a half or thereabouts, you have a pair of loppers, and these are going to have longer handles. Sometimes they'll have metal handles. This one has fiberglass, and one of the really valuable things about this particular one
I was going to say, those
is
telescope, don't they?
these will extend out.
Look
So
at you.
for those that may be vertically challenged, or for anybody who doesn't want to get on a ladder and haul that around, these are a great option. This is a Structron pair. Again, Corona makes a good solid pruner, or I'm sorry, lopper, as does Felco and a few other brands. So now, when you're ready to tackle a slightly larger branch, something bigger than an inch and a half, a handsaw is your best friend. And the handsaw can come in any various lengths from 6 inches on up to a foot and a half. I liked the compactness of the folding handsaw. And if this folds away, and you can put it in your back pocket. If you've got the right kind of jeans on, you can slip that in your side pocket. Mm-hmm. And this is incredibly handy to just have with you, and you can kind of alternate between the lopping shears and the handsaw. Because if you get bigger than an inch and a half or so, the handsaw is really where you need to be. So anyway, those are some great pruning tools to have in your toolbox if you go out into the garden and attempt to control growth.
And hey, great holiday gifts, right?
And great holiday gifts
for the gardener in your life.
The stocking stuffer.
There you go.
There you go. You get like 4 or 5 of them in there.
Right.
That's great.
All right, and we let Martie have sharp things tonight as well, so we'll see if it pays off or not. What do you got?
I was just going to do just a little tiny baby pruning tutorial here. This is a mulberry sprout. I'm going to give you all hope, okay? This is a mulberry sprout that I cut out of my own garden, and it's had all summer to grow because I just didn't get around to it, okay? You're not the only one that has stuff in your garden you don't like. We all have stuff in our gardens we don't like. But I did, you know, this is going to be permanently pruned right here, okay? But for stuff you actually want to keep, and it just needs a little shaping up, pruners for small stuff, like Rusty was saying, you know, for little things, and these are all small branches on here. I'm just going to do just a little thing here. Okay, when you prune, for example, this one's broken, so we're going to take it off, right? When you prune, you just don't hack it off. Okay, you don't do this. Oh, that's too long, isn't it? Yeah, you don't do that either, okay? And you don't do this.
With the blade facing up.
That's right, because your pruners have two sides. One is flat and one is indented. Have the flat side toward where you want to cut it off, and you'll make a nice, sorry Jim, you'll make a nice flat cut there. Don't ever leave a stub. Do not leave a stub. Don't.
See, this is why we don't let you have sharp things.
Incredibly important not to leave a stub.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. I'm
She's
just going to
threatening our
aim for
viewers,
you.
Rusty.
Okay, there you go.
Don't encourage.
I threaten our crews.
So
she can threaten the viewers.
That's right. I have horses too. I can do a whip. It's all in the wrist. So yeah, when you're pruning, cut that off, and it's a nice flush cut. Put the flat side toward. It's very easy. And at first you'll do it wrong, and then the more you prune the stuff in your yard, which I assure you probably needs it, you'll get a little more practice. That's just a little tip on how to use pruners, and this theory applies to loppers as well. Can I borrow those for just a second?
Sure.
Because you can see this side is very flat, but this side again has the indentation. These are both bypass pruners and loppers. So the blade goes past that edge and cuts just like a scissors, and then you can see maybe how it does that. I'm not sure. So you can see, all right, so there's a flat side and there's a not flat side. Always cut with the flat side toward the plant itself, toward the main plant.
And this is something you could be doing now.
You sure can. You sure can. Anything that's dormant, doesn't have leaves on it, it's in dormancy. You can prune anything broken, anything too low, anything crossing and rubbing the other branch. Those are the first things you always take out. After that, you can prune for shape or size. But when you look at something, and it's easier to do with the leaves off of anything, of a tree or shrub, anything like that. Rusty was saying at an earlier point, I don't know if we were on the air or not, but don't prune things that bloom in the spring until after they're done blooming. So lilac, forsythia, mock orange, those kinds of things. Don't prune those until after they're done blooming. You prune them for shape or size, but you wait until they're done blooming and then you prune them out, because if you prune them now, you won't have any flowers, then you're going to be mad at me. So don't do that. But anything that's dead like that, you know, that's dormant, looks dead, it's not dead, it's just resting. So you can prune those now.
Okay. All right, Jim?
Well, Marty, I'm glad you told me how to prune, because I've been leaving a lot of stubs on my...
Oh, no, say it isn't so.
No, it's the truth.
See, we all make mistakes, right?
So now I know how to prune.
Confessions of a horticulturist.
Yes. Shame, shame.
I worship the ground you walk on, and you tell me this. Golly,
there's
Moses.
hope for the rest. See, I'm just like, wow, there's hope for me.
Oh, man.
Holy cats, Jim.
All
Really?
right. Well, I thought we'd talk a little bit about evergreens. And before I get into my talk, I would like to emphasize the fact that we should not be planting some of the evergreens, particularly the evergreens like Scotch pine, red pine, Austrian pine, and Mugo pine, because they're very subject to a disease called pine wilt disease, which is transmitted to these plants by a longhorn beetle that carries the nematode to the, and so when the beetle feeds on those plants, nematodes are transferred to those plants, and then the nematodes eventually kill it. So don't plant those kind of plants in your garden or landscape. Now, there are many different kinds of evergreens, and I thought for the average homeowner that just has a small amount of space, I really like the taxus, and we talked about taxus. It comes in all kinds of varieties. Some are columnar, some are bushy. So it's really a nice plant. And at this holiday season, you can clip these off and put them in decorations, and it works out really quite well. So I really like taxus. And some of the varieties, so you people know more about the varieties than what I do.
The common name is Japanese yew.
Taunton, Everlow. You've got the pyramidal one, which is Taxus cuspidata.
So they all have. I mean, there's just so many varieties of the taxus. The other plant, then, so I really for the small garden, I think taxus works out. Most of these other things are trees, and so they get too large.
Oh, it's my favorite though.
One here that I really like is called concolor fir, and
Beautiful.
they have long needles. It does very, very well in the Midwest. So if you're looking for a nice plant, now they have pyramidal shape, but they are very large trees. So you got to figure out, you know, where you're planting these things. So, but concolor fir is a nice one.
I have one. They're
You have
lovely.
one? Aren't they
Yes,
nice?
I do. I do. And also the way you can tell, see, these aren't, you can just do that all day long. It
Yeah.
doesn't hurt. Firs are furry.
Soft.
Spruces
Yeah,
are spiky.
They're very nice.
People are like, is that a fir or a spruce? Well, that's how you tell. Firs are furry.
No.
Spruces
Yeah,
are spiky.
they're really. The other plant, or another tree that we have is the white pine. I have a large number of white pine on my property, but they take up a lot of space, and they're actually a very, very large, it can be a very large tree. My trees are probably about 60 feet in height. Now, they will get pine wilt disease, but it's infrequent. So it's a nice plant, but they're very susceptible to ice storms. If you have an ice storm, they break easily in these ice storms. We had an ice storm, I think, about 10, 15 years ago. I had branches all over the place, and actually large limbs, large limbs as well. So there are disadvantages. The other disadvantage is that they drop their needles, some of the needles, in the fall months. And so you can load up your spoutings with a whole bunch of needles. Now, it makes great mulch.
Yeah.
If you use that mulch, use those pine needles as mulch, but there is a disadvantage. The other disadvantage is they have a tendency to produce sap. So, you know, you don't want to have your picnic bench underneath a white pine, nor your deck, because the sap flows down. And particularly seems like the cones, and you can see here to look at the sap on that cone, that they produce a large amount of sap. So very, very sticky. And it's really, and you know, if you park your car or vehicle underneath the tree, you have that sap on your vehicles and on the windshield. And
It's really sticky.
it's really bad.
We
How
grew
do you get it off?
We grew up with white pines, and we climb them.
Yeah.
Because the branches grow like in a wagon wheel, and you just climb right to the top. Well, you can't get it off your windshield like this, but when we get sap on our hands, we just rub it in the dirt so you won't stick yourself all day.
Well, I wanted to.
It's not going to work for windshield. Once the dirt gets in it, then it washes off later. But you gotta put it, you know, like powder or dirt or something on it, and then it'll
Break
wash
it
off
down.
later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to be nice and clean, but I do the same thing.
See?
But maybe I think turpentine it takes it off on something.
That's a lot of trouble. It's dirt, you know.
Well, yeah, I mean, but it is.
Yeah.
It's a real problem.
It is really sticky. That's true.
And,
Okay. Did you want to do any more this time, or do you want to save
well,
some
we
for
could
the next
do
time
another
around?
one here. This another fir that's really, really pretty, and it's called noble fir, and it looks like this, and really a nice plant. They're used in Christmas trees. They retain their needles very well, so it's a very nice fir, the noble fir, and it does very well in the Midwest. So.
All right, we'll come back to you with some more of those here in a few minutes. Okay, Rusty, you've got a question from David from Lovington, and bear with because this is a long one. I have over the years always planted Kentucky bluegrass. I have, however, developed several 3-foot diameter areas of much finer grass. It's in full sun, very fine, very dense, and a shade greener than the rest of my grass. I like it, and I would like to seed some areas that are much shadier. I am suggesting that it is red creeping fescue, but I'm not positive. The attached picture doesn't show it very well, but it is definitely noticeable when seeing it in person. 1, do you agree with planting it, or do you have another suggestion for shady areas? And if it is red creeping fescue, what particular type do you suggest? Because I find several when Googling it. I read that it is very tolerant of shade, which would mean it would fit in my lawn well with my mature trees. Is there a downside to this type of grass, and your thoughts in comparing it to Kentucky bluegrass?
How much time do I have?
Woo! Show's over, folks.
That's an excellent, very detailed question.
Very.
And I'll try to answer most of these points here. David, I guess, and anybody who's considering seeding or trying to grow turf in a shadier location, the creeping red fescue, the sheep's fescue, the hard fescue, most of those plants will do better in the shade than like your Kentucky bluegrass or pruning rye, which is what typically is planted more in the full sun. As far as the darker green color, it is amazing what new genetics have done for turfgrass. Any lawn that's planted 20, 25 years ago or further back will probably never have that great dark green color that some of the newer genetics in any of the turf grasses can provide these days. I mean, it really is pretty amazing whenever, if you seed an area, there's a stark contrast. And so certainly in the shadier locations, I'm a big fan of the fine fescues. There are a couple of bluegrass varieties that will tolerate some shade. It just depends on how heavy. The biggest disadvantage is they are a finer texture, and in general, they don't self-repair as well as like a bluegrass lawn will. Bluegrass will have some stolons or rhizomes that go out, and so it will kind of self-repair itself a little bit. For anybody who is this detailed and want to really dig and find a great variety, so in most of your seeds, there's a mix or a blend of different turf grasses, and these are probably looking at more of a blend, and so there's typically 4, maybe 5 different varieties. There is a program called NTEP, National Turfgrass Evaluation Program. And it's a national program where the University of Illinois is a host for one of the sites of this. Purdue University is another, so there's several Midwest locations. They just released some information on 2018 testing, I believe it was, for fine fescues. And so if you want to get your inner fact finder on, your inner, your encyclopedia researching, you can go and search for various turfgrass species or varieties through that list. It's extensive. NTEP, and then just type in turfgrass evaluation, and it'll come up on a Google search. If you can find a grass seed that has probably, I would say, 1 or maybe even 2 of a variety that's in there that's highly rated, it's a good mix.
I think David's up for the challenge.
Sounds like
as
it.
excellent as that question was.
I only go to that site about once every 5 years because the turf people, the seed people, they know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Next up, Martie, someone sent in a plant ID question for you, wanting to know what this is.
Do we have I don't know if we have a picture or not, but the plant is Persicaria. There we go. It's got a distinctive V shape. Could someone tell me what kind of plant this is? It has these distinctive leaves, the dark V on it. In the fall, the stems grow out. It gets tiny red petals. Thanks for your help, Cheryl. It's definitely Persicaria. I knew it before I even saw the picture. This is Persicaria firetail. Persicaria wasn't cultivated that much. It wasn't that big of a deal, but they came out a few years back with a variety called Painter's Palette. It's an annual. And then now they have this one. They've accentuated not the foliage. The Painter's Palette foliage is yellow and green, and it's got red. It's really pretty. But this one, they've accentuated the blossoms. So you see these long stems on the picture there, with little tiny red flowers along it. It's called, hence the name, firetail. It's a long tail.
Is that a summer or a spring?
It's a summer. It's an annual. They bloom. They're pretty all year, but then they start blooming, and they bloom probably midsummer on.
Okay.
But
so is the seeds hardy then?
The thing about the Persicaria is the seeds. They reseed themselves with gay abandon. I mean, they are all over the place. if you think you like
You gotta really
Persicaria,
want it.
you really should want it, yes, because you will have it. Mark my words. And it's not hard to pull out, but it will proliferate, let me tell you what.
I've only seen you make that face one other time, and that's when we were talking about Jerusalem artichokes. See? I told you.
They'll do the same thing. I mean, there's something. So yeah, but Persicaria, it is pretty.
Yeah, it was pretty.
It really is.
Thank you, ma'am. All right, now to Jim. This is Roses Overwinter, Dan from Aurora. No pics for this one, but he says, I grew a couple of rose bushes in pots last year, and they are beautiful. How do I overwinter them so they come back next spring? I live in an apartment, so I don't have a basement or garage, just an outdoor storage closet.
Well, that's a real problem. I mean, I really think probably it would be better just to follow what you did this past year, and you were successful with that. So I would go with starting a new plant and a new pot and everything else.
Yeah,
that's what I would do.
Limited.
Or you could find somebody that has land that you could dig a hole and put the whole pot in the hole, and then be sure that you don't have any space between the pot and the other part of the ground. So it's you could do that, but it's pretty hard to overwinter something in an apartment.
That's tough.
I don't think it would survive.
Interesting. Okay, thank you, sir. All right, we're back around to you, Rusty. Dethatched grass. This is a Facebook question. Don from Jacksonville. Boy, you get the long ones every time.
I do.
I have the best looking yard in my neighborhood. Zoysia?
Zoysia.
Got it. Okay.
You got it.
I used to mow with a bagger to catch all the clippings and would burn off the residual dead grass every third or fourth spring to allow for new growth. Age has kept me from being able to mow my own yard for a few years, and my neighbor volunteers to cut it every 10 days. I don't want to burden him with the hassle of bagging the grass, and I'm afraid the old dead grass clippings are beginning to accumulate to the point of probably needing dethatched. Should I have the grass dethatched in the fall or summer of the year? I will be burning the old grass in the spring of the year. Will that be sufficient? I lost my place.
Enough to
you get the drift. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
We have some challenges with zoysia. So for all of our viewers out there who don't know what zoysia grass is a warm season grass. So it's different than, say, the typical bluegrass, perennial ryegrass lawn, in that it doesn't actually green up until it starts to get hot. So usually at some point about the middle to the end of May, it will come alive, and it looks fantastic over the summer. The other unique thing about it is it's lower. So most of your other turf grasses you're mowing at 3, hopefully maybe 3.5 inches. Zoysia grass, well, actually is happy as a clam getting mowed at about 2 inches, maybe 2.5 inches. And it's very interwoven.
Oh, yeah.
So you got a couple of things going on here. One is I want to do a myth buster. Clippings from your lawn do not cause thatch, not if it's mowed regularly. And that is something that has been tested and tried and true. So don't worry about collecting or bagging your clippings if you're concerned about thatch. Zoysia grass is typically more of a transition grass, something south of, say, I-70, Effingham to St. Louis, and then south. It will grow north of that. And typically speaking, you want to maintain it, unlike your cool season grasses, in the summer with dethatching, aerating, and those kinds of things, because it's actively growing. It will do a much better job of repairing itself if that occurs in more like really probably June, July, and August. And you would never do that to your cool season turf grasses. So as far as the burning goes, I mixed reviews on that. I guess as long as it's safe, you're probably okay. And really probably every 3 to 4 years is fine. If you can core aerate it about every other year, you wouldn't have to burn it probably at all. I know plenty of zoysia grass patches that are up by us, and they've never been dethatched. Everything that you could do wrong is being done wrong, and they're still growing.
Still thriving.
So don't be concerned that you have to. If you have more than an inch of thatch, that's when you need to be concerned about it, not at a ½ inch.
Okay. All right.
So when does that grass turn brown? I mean,
first frost, it's done.
That's
done.
It's brown as brown can be.
Yeah, it greens up late and it browns off early.
So I've heard that some people dye that. They put a green dye on it.
Yeah.
Have you heard
green
of that?
Paint? I
Dear God in heaven.
Do you want some industry secrets?
Yes.
Do you want to know? There are some heavily used, not quite athletic fields, but gathering spaces up in the city of Chicago that will occasionally get a little paint on it to help because it's heavily trafficked and it needs to look fantastic all the time.
Yeah, okay, so they,
Having some Murgatroyd.
All right, we've got 1 minute left, Marty. Here we go. This is
Okay.
Clematis help from Phil. He said his
Yes.
wife loves it. He bought her one in the spring. It's on the east side against the fence. Gets a good amount of sun, but it looks terrible. It's got trellis and everything, but it's just sad, and they are begging for your help. So help Phil in
Yeah.
under a minute.
Phil, you may have
Sorry.
clematis wilt. I know you mentioned the other plants in the bed look good, help, but you may just have wilt on that clematis, and you may just have to yank it out of there and try again.
Okay, well, she did it in under a minute.
There you
Okay,
go.
well done. Okay, well, we are out of time. Thank you so much for watching. We appreciate you. Thanks to our panelists for coming and bringing all of their knowledge and show and tells with them. Please find us on all of our socials, Facebook and Instagram, and drop us a line on our Gmail if you would like to get your question answered on the show. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you next time. Good night.